A warm greeting. Today is Monday, October 30th, 2023. This is the meteorologist Ruben Garcia. In this video, I will provide an update on the tropical storm Pilar, which will be approaching the coast of El Salvador in the coming days before taking a turn to the southwest. Along this path, it will bring heavy rain to Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador, where there is a high risk of flooding over the next 3 days. It is also important for residents of Central America to pay close attention to a new disturbance that has a moderate probability of becoming the next cyclone of the Atlantic hurricane season and potentially becoming Tropical Storm Vince as it moves west-southwest. In the long term, it threatens the regions of Nicaragua, Honduras, and the islands of Providencia and San Andres. Unfortunately, Central America, especially Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador, faces the threat of 2 heavy rain events that can cause significant flooding and landslides over the next 7 days. First, let's talk about the forecast for Tropical Storm Pilar, whose outer bands are already bringing heavy rain to Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador. Here, you can see the visible satellite animation, where we can observe the circulation associated with this cyclone. Currently, it is still contending with some shear winds from the east, which keep the most active area of precipitation and thunderstorms to the west of the circulation. Nevertheless, the outer bands on the right side of the circulation are causing heavy rain, mainly affecting the western coast of Nicaragua, the south of Honduras, and the coast of El Salvador, where weather conditions will deteriorate over the next few days. Over the last 24 hours, Tropical Storm Pilar has continued to move slowly towards the east-northeast. It is projected to start moving a bit faster shortly. Fortunately, this east-northeastward turn will be temporary, lasting for a period of 24 to 36 hours. It will then turn west-southwest, moving away from the Central American coast. Nevertheless, it will pass close enough to El Salvador to bring heavy rain to Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and El Salvador. In terms of intensity, models predict that it will continue to gradually strengthen over the next 36 hours. It is anticipated to reach its maximum intensity in approximately 36 hours when it is closest to El Salvador, with sustained maximum winds of approximately 100 km per hour, making it a strong tropical storm. The official forecast from the National Hurricane Center continues to predict that it will be closest around 2 a.m. on Wednesday with sustained winds of 110 km per hour. Due to its proximity to El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua, a tropical storm watch is in effect for the entire coast of El Salvador, southern regions of Honduras, and parts of northwestern Nicaragua. Note that it will take this turn just before reaching the coast, and for now, it appears that tropical storm force winds will remain over the Pacific waters. However, as I mentioned yesterday, the right side of the circulation will bring a moisture flow from the Pacific towards the northern coast of Costa Rica, western Nicaragua, southern Honduras, and El Salvador. This could lead to heavy precipitation in these areas. For example, the GFS model estimates that some areas of El Salvador, western Nicaragua, and southern Honduras could receive over 300 millimeters of accumulated precipitation over the next 72 hours. From today, Monday, until next Wednesday, over 300 millimeters of precipitation is possible in parts of southern Honduras, western Nicaragua, and much of the central and southern regions of El Salvador. For Costa Rica, current expectations are for 100 to 150 millimeters of accumulated precipitation. The risk of flooding is extremely high for these areas. If you live in a flood-prone area, you should take the necessary precautions to protect your life and property. While Tropical Storm Pilar will approach Central America and then turn west-southwest, unfortunately, Honduras and Nicaragua will face another threat, a low-pressure system located just south of Puerto Rico. If we take a closer look at the infrared satellite animation, we can see that this area of bad weather is generating strong thunderstorms. It is expected to acquire cyclonic organization over the next few days as it moves west-southwest. Today, at 2 p.m., the National Hurricane Center increased the chances of a tropical depression forming to 60% as it approaches Honduras and Nicaragua. It is very likely that a tropical cyclone will form, and perhaps it will become Tropical Storm Vince before reaching Central America. This disturbance is projected to reach this region over the next weekend. Let's look at the latest projections from the global models. Here we have the projection from the GFS model. You can see that today it has a tropical depression developing just north of Venezuela during the early hours of Thursday and eventually moving west-southwest. It is possible that it may become a tropical depression during the late hours of Thursday when it passes just south of Jamaica while maintaining a west-southwest trajectory. In the latest GFS model run, it is projected to reach the coast of Nicaragua as a strong tropical storm or Category 1 hurricane during the late hours of Saturday. If we compare this projection to what it showed yesterday, it has definitely adjusted to a much lower intensity. Remember that yesterday it had a major hurricane, but fortunately, today it is less aggressive and now has a tropical storm or Category 1 hurricane when it reaches Central America. After reaching Nicaragua, the GFS model predicts that it will cross over Honduras and position itself just east of Belize. In this trajectory, it will bring excessive rainfall accumulations to Nicaragua and Honduras, potentially causing significant flooding and landslides in the region. Now, let's look at the European model's projection, which is less aggressive. You can see that it doesn't develop a tropical depression until the early hours of Friday as it approaches the east coast of Nicaragua. In fact, in the latest run, it only has a weak tropical depression or tropical storm moving over Nicaragua during the early hours of Saturday. Once again, we have a significant discrepancy between the GFS model, which has a strong tropical storm, and the European model, which has a weak tropical storm. The European model continues to forecast that the disturbance's circulation could cross over the eastern Pacific waters and eventually move west, away from the Central American region. Long-term forecasts also show a significant discrepancy between the two major models. The European model predicts a westward movement over the eastern Pacific, while the GFS model has a trajectory over Honduras and Belize. The GFS model's scenario would be the worst-case scenario for Honduras and Nicaragua because it would result in more rain for the Central American region. Other models, such as the German model, align with the European model. It has a weak tropical storm approaching the east of Nicaragua during the early hours of Saturday. Meanwhile, the Canadian model also aligns with the European and German models, showing a weak tropical storm moving over the east of Nicaragua during the late hours of Saturday. The majority of global models agree that it will likely reach Nicaragua during Saturday as a weak or moderate tropical storm. While this may not pose a significant risk in terms of winds, it is expected to bring heavy rainfall that can cause serious flooding issues. Considering that Tropical Depression number 12 passed over this region and saturated the soil, along with the proximity of Tropical Storm Pilar, which will bring additional rain to this area, any disturbance moving through this region could lead to significant flooding. The ensemble members of the GFS model show different scenarios. Some members have a trajectory over Nicaragua as a strong tropical storm or Category 1 hurricane, eventually moving over Honduras and toward the Belize region. Others have a trajectory a bit more to the north-northwest, potentially threatening the region of Cuba. Some have this trajectory over Nicaragua and Honduras. On the other hand, the ensemble members of the European model are much less aggressive. The majority of them maintain it as a tropical depression or weak tropical storm. Some cross it over to the eastern Pacific, while others have a trajectory similar to the GFS model over Honduras and Belize. There is still uncertainty in the long term about whether it will take a course over Honduras or if it will maintain a trajectory toward the eastern Pacific. Under the GFS model scenario, with a trajectory over Nicaragua and Honduras, look at the estimated accumulated rainfall that is anticipated during Saturday. According to the American model's projection, about 200 millimeters of accumulated precipitation is expected over much of northern Nicaragua and parts of central and northern Honduras. If the GFS model's projection is realized, this represents a serious threat to Nicaragua and Honduras over the coming weekend. The same applies to the islands of San Andres and Providencia, where accumulated precipitation of over 150 millimeters is possible. This is a very serious situation due to the threat of two possible tropical cyclones. First, Tropical Storm Pilar, which will bring heavy rain to El Salvador, the south of Honduras, and western Nicaragua. Eventually, what could potentially become Tropical Storm Vince, which could bring heavy rain and flooding to Nicaragua and Honduras over the weekend. I urge the residents of Central America, especially those in Belize, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, to stay vigilant and keep an eye on the forecast. To do so, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking the red button below the video that says subscribe. Then, click the bell to receive notifications when I upload new videos. Now, I bid you farewell, and I'll see you tomorrow.